Hello, thank you very much for being here. I'll ask, as usual, everybody to turn off the phone rings. Thank you. And I have the great pleasure to introduce you to Mrs. María Fernanda Espinosa, who is the President of the UN General Assembly. We're very grateful that she took from her time, which is quite busy here with the meeting in UNCTAD, to come and speak to the Geneva Press Corps. So we'll give her the floor first, and as usual afterwards, the President will take a few questions. So Mrs. Espinosa, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here today. I also understand that it is a school holiday in Geneva, so I highly appreciate your presence this afternoon. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Good afternoon. This is my first press conference in my capacity of President of the General Assembly in Geneva, when I assumed my post on the 17th of September. And I am really delighted to visit the UN office here in the midst of our anniversary, because tomorrow it is the United Nations Day and the United Nations anniversary. So I think I can say a happy anniversary to all of us, especially to the press corps in Geneva, and you performed such an excellent job. As you may know, I used to be the ambassador of Ecuador here in Geneva, and I followed your briefings with great interest as one of my main sources of information, so thank you for that. And today, as President of the General Assembly, it is my plan to foster more cooperation with the teams in New York and in Geneva and in Vienna and all the UN offices around the world, so we can work together to bring the United Nations closer to the people and bring the people closer to the work of the United Nations. As you know, the theme for this year's General Assembly is to make the United Nations relevant to all people. And for that, I think that the role of the media, of the press, is crucial. And we count on you to help us disseminate the work the United Nations do. My presidency, dear friends, is also very strongly guided by a commitment to multilateralism. I think that the need to strengthen multilateralism, to make it worthwhile, to make it more relevant, more efficient, to deliver more and better, it is much needed nowadays. I firmly believe that the only way to address and solve global challenges is through a multilateral approach. Even if we're told or see every day that multilateralism and national interests do not match, I firmly believe that it is possible to safeguard national interest and sovereignty at the same time as we embark on collective action and shared responsibilities on the key issues. Can we perhaps think that climate change or tuberculosis or AIDS or natural disasters, disarmament can be achieved by one single country? It's even impossible to think about unilateral responses to global challenges. And since we're talking about countries working together, I would like to highlight the work that we have been doing for the first international conference of the General Assembly period, which is on the issue of migration. We are very much committed to making the December conference in Marrakesh on migration a great opportunity, not only to adopt the Global Compact on migration that is aimed at ensuring safe, orderly, and regular migration, but to take this moment to boost the migration agenda and boost the commitments of the world and of governments around the world regarding the very timely and current challenge of migration and refugees. As you know, migration and refugees are part of my 7 priorities. I have established 7 priorities for this session, one of them being migration and refugees, but also we will be working on issues of gender equality, decent work, the rights of persons with disabilities, environmental action, basically on 2 main issues: climate action, implementation of the Paris Agreement, especially on climate finance, capacity building, and technology transfer, but also in a global campaign against plastics. The issue of plastic pollution in oceans is one of great concern, and it has a direct impact not only on the sea biodiversity, but also in an impact on human beings and our health. So this is going to be very much an important part of our work. We will be working on youth, peace, and security. That's yet another one of the 7 priorities, and the revitalization of the United Nations. These 7 priorities will be the motor that drives our agenda during the 73rd session. We will perhaps, if you're interested, talk more about the revitalization of the United Nations with 3 pillars: implementation of the reform process, implementation to boost politically the process of revitalization of the General Assembly, and of course a 3rd pillar, which is the reform of the Security Council. 3 very important parts of our agenda. I have to remind ourselves that during High-Level Week in New York a couple of weeks ago, I think that there was one word that came up over and over again, I would say almost unanimously, and that was the support for multilateralism, but of course the support also for the 7 priorities that I have established for my tenure as president. Yet again, the theme for this year, and I quote, is making the United Nations relevant to all people, global leadership and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. It's the umbrella under which we will deliver on the 7 priorities that I just mentioned. The 7 priorities are cross-cutting. They touched on all the Sustainable Development Goals and on the work that the General Assembly is to perform this year. For this year, we have 15 high-level events and conferences that we will organize. The first in December, Marrakesh in March, the South-South Cooperation in Argentina, and so on and so forth. The other very important issue is that we will join forces with ILO. You know that the International Labour Organization is celebrating its centennial this year. We will team up with them to celebrate the anniversary around the issue of the future of work and decent work, which is SDG number 8, that is going to be assessed by the Economic and Social Council in New York also this year. I came to Geneva basically to meet with all the heads of agencies, with the High Commissioner on Human Rights, to meet with Michael Muller, the UNOC director, and I also came to be part of a very important moment for the United Nations, for UNCTAD, but also for the business world. I came to take part of the Global Leaders Investment Summit. This gathered several thousands of people coming from the private sector. I think that the message to the summit is bold and very straightforward. We need more engagement and involvement of the private sector in the delivering of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are aware that for 2030, we need new jobs. 600 million new jobs have to be created for for the year of 2030. We need more and better investment, sustainable investment, especially on areas such as low carbon technologies, for example, much needed investment to make a reality the blue economy, investment to boost the inclusion and the participation of women and youth. I think that we cannot think about an inclusive economy that would leave half of the population behind, and here I am speaking for the economic empowerment of women. If you look at the numbers, we are doing better perhaps in the number of women parliamentarians. At the government level, we are doing a little better. But if we look at the numbers, at the number of women that are CEOs of private companies, then the number drops. So we need more women in positions in power in the private sector as well. I am fully committed to working with all member states in this House to make this a productive, smooth, and efficient year, and to achieve concrete results for the people we serve around the world. And I mean what I say. My challenge, but also my strong commitment, is to listen more to the people out there and translate their needs and demands into action. That is my commitment. And I'm here to do just that. My presidency has been guided by an acronym that I repeat to my team every day. It's the DARE acronym: Dare do things better, dare change the status quo when it's needed, and DARE stands for delivery, accountability, relevance, and efficiency. And well, thank you, and ready to respond to any of your questions, of course.
Thank you very much. I will start with Laurent Sierro, the representative, or maybe you can introduce yourself, and Vice President of our Association of Accredited Journalists. Laurent.
Laurent Sierro from the Swiss News Agency. So you mentioned the importance of the commitment towards multilateralism, and in the framework of the World Investment Summit, there is one country which is the main funder of the UN, who is rather in the trend of backlash and of reviewing either multilateral or bilateral agreements, and who is not represented politically at the WIF. So is it a source of concern, and what are the perspectives for revitalizing the UN without the commitment of one of its major members?
I think that perhaps one of the beauties of the General Assembly is that it is the most representative body in the United Nations. We are represented by 193 countries plus 3 observer members. And the idea, this is the Parliament of Humanity. The idea is that basically my role as president is to make sure that we convene, we agree, we commit, and we reach consensus. And consensus does not mean necessarily unanimity. What is important is when you make an analysis of the messages that brought more than 130 heads of state and government in New York a couple of weeks ago, then the voice and the message in favor of multilateralism was extremely powerful. And I think that we have to really push for consensus, for agreement and commitment, but we also have to be democratic and open to deal with dissent and with countries that in a situation or another can perhaps be in disagreement, which doesn't mean that we cannot have agreement on certain things of the multilateral agenda, which are relevant for all. In this, the United States that you just mentioned is our host country. It's a great contributor to the humanitarian actions of the United Nations. And I think it is important to keep in mind what I just mentioned, that the idea of safeguarding national interest and protecting the sovereignty of a country does not preclude necessarily